At 15 seconds, guidance is internal.
For all of human history, the moon was a distant dream, a pale light in the night sky that no one could ever touch. Ancient peoples worshipped it, sailors steered by it, and poets wrote of it for thousands of years. Yet no human being had ever come close to setting foot upon it. Then, in the middle of the 20th century, everything changed. The world had split into two great superpowers, locked in a tense Cold War for dominance. And a brand new frontier had suddenly opened, not on Earth, but in the skies far above it. In 1957, the Soviet Union stunned the world by launching Sputnik, the first satellite. Soon after, they sent the first human into orbit, and America was losing the space race badly. Then, in 1961, President Kennedy made a bold and almost reckless promise. Before the decade was out, an American would walk upon the moon and return safely home. It was a staggering challenge. The technology needed to do it did not even exist yet. Hundreds of thousands of engineers would spend the next 8 years inventing it from scratch. They would build new rockets, new computers, new spacesuits, and new ways of flying. Step by step, an impossible dream was turned into an engineering reality. At the very heart of the effort stood the most powerful machine ever built, the Saturn V. It rose 363 feet into the sky, taller than the Statue of Liberty. Its 5 great engines could unleash 7.5 million pounds of raw thrust. Fully loaded with fuel, the rocket weighed nearly 3,000 tons. It was, quite simply, the largest flying machine humanity had ever created. On the morning of July 16, 1969, it stood ready on the launch pad. 3 men suited up that morning for the journey of a lifetime. Neil Armstrong, the calm, brilliant test pilot who would command the mission. Buzz Aldrin, the sharp engineer who would walk beside him on the surface, and Michael Collins, who would orbit the moon alone while the others descended. 1 million people gathered along the Florida coast to watch, and an estimated 600 million more waited by their televisions around the world. At 32 minutes past 9, the final countdown began.
At 15 seconds, guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have...
Slowly, impossibly, the giant rocket tore itself free from the Earth. In just 12 minutes, it was racing through space at over 17,000 miles an hour. Stage by stage, the spent boosters fell away and tumbled back toward the ocean, until only the small spacecraft remained, pointed at the moon. For the next 3 days, the astronauts coasted across the vast emptiness between two worlds. Inside the cramped cabin, they ate, slept, and ran their checklists. They broadcast live television back to a spellbound planet. Behind them, the Earth slowly shrank to a tiny, fragile blue marble, a delicate oasis of life suspended alone in an endless ocean of black. It was a view that would change how humanity saw itself forever. Ahead, the moon grew steadily larger, grey and cratered, and utterly silent. On the 4th day, the spacecraft slipped quietly into orbit around it. Below them scrolled a harsh alien landscape no human eye had ever seen up close. Mountains, craters, and endless plains of grey dust drifted silently past their windows. Somewhere down there lay their target, a flat plain called the Sea of Tranquility. It was time to attempt what no one had ever done before. Armstrong and Aldrin floated into the fragile lunar module named Eagle. Collins stayed behind, alone, in the command ship Columbia. The two craft separated, and Eagle began its lonely fall toward the surface. In Houston, Mission Control held its breath. Hundreds of controllers stared at their screens, 250,000 miles away, and powerless to help. Eagle's engine fired, gently slowing its plunge toward the ground. Then, without warning, alarms began to scream inside the tiny cabin. The guidance computer was overloading. flashing error codes nobody had ever seen in flight. In Houston, a 26-year-old engineer had seconds to decide and made the call, "Keep going." But as they dropped lower, a new danger filled the window. The computer was steering them straight into a deadly field of giant boulders. So Armstrong did something no simulation had planned for. He took manual control. Skimming low and fast across the surface, he hunted for a patch of safe, flat ground. 60 seconds of fuel remaining, then 30. The tension was unbearable. Dust streamed wildly across the surface as the lander dropped the final few feet. And then, with only seconds of fuel left, the Eagle gently settled onto the moon.
Okay, engine stop.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
In mission control, the room exploded in cheers and pure, overwhelming relief. For the first time in history, human beings were resting on the surface of another world. 6 hours later, a hatch opened on the silent grey plane. Slowly, carefully, Neil Armstrong backed down the ladder of the Eagle. He paused on the final rung and then lowered his boot toward the dust.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Oh, that looks beautiful to me, Neil.
With those words, a human being stood upon another world for the very first time.
Okay. At the foot of the ladder, the lamb footbeds are only depressed in the surface about...
Buzz Aldrin soon climbed down to join him on the surface. He gazed out across the empty horizon and called it magnificent desolation. Together, they bounded across the moon in gravity just 1/6 of Earth's. They unveiled a plaque and planted the flag of their nation in the ancient soil.
Quality of the TV.
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike. It really is.
Oh, geez, that's great. Is the lighting halfway decent?
Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see.
They gathered precious rocks and soil to carry back home to Earth. They set up experiments that would beam scientific data back for years to come. And they spoke, by radio, with the President of the United States. After 21 hours on the moon, it was finally time to leave. Eagle's ascent engine fired, lifting the two explorers back up off the surface. Rising over the grey horizon, they raced to catch Collins in orbit. The three men were reunited and turned their ship for the long road home. Days later, they fell back through the atmosphere in a streak of fire and splashed down safely into the waters of the Pacific Ocean. They returned as the most famous people on the planet, and the whole world celebrated. Apollo would go on to carry 10 more men to the moon, and then the journey stopped. But the footprints they left behind remain there to this very day, untouched in the airless dust, perfectly preserved across half a century, a permanent mark of the single day that humanity first left its cradle and touched another world.